Welcome to this New Thinking for a New World podcast of the Thalberg Foundation. War. What is it good for? Turkey and Greece are locked in a struggle in the Eastern Mediterranean. This struggle feels like it belongs more in 1920 than in 2020. What happens if Turkey's President Erdoğan miscalculates how far he can push the Greeks? Could this lead to war between the two NATO allies? Will Greece's European allies come to its rescue? In this episode, Alan Stoga looks for answers from Constantinos Filis, Executive Director at the Institute of International Relations at Panteion University in Athens.
One of the hottest of global hotspots today is the Eastern Mediterranean. There is a witch's brew of competing alliances, conflicting national claims for massive offshore natural gas, gunboats, religion, history, and perhaps most dangerously, a classic big man type leader who appears to think he has a rendezvous with destiny. I want to talk about all those elements, but let me start with a very simple question, Constantinos. Do you think there will be a war between Greece and Turkey anytime soon?
No, I don't think so, and I don't hope so. There are many reasons for that. The main, of course, being that Greece and Turkey are both NATO allies, a part of NATO. And although NATO might be considered as obsolete by President Trump or been suffering from brain death, as President Macron has stated, it seems to me difficult that we might see a war between Greece and Turkey. We might, of course, very well see a hot incident taking place, but a large-scale war between two NATO allies seems to be out of the question. Of course, I have to stress that in today's world, uncertainties certainly prevail over certainties, which means that we must be prepared for any scenario. But this scenario seems to be the least possible.
So hopefully no war. But what does President Erdoğan want?
It is evident that Erdoğan wants to dictate the terms of the game. And he's seeking geopolitical breathing room for a Turkey that he feels that is suffocating. So he wants more geopolitical breathing room beyond his own borders. He doesn't necessarily want to conquer the territory of a third country, be it Greece or Cyprus, although Turkey has already conquered almost one-third of Cyprus. But it doesn't seem to me that this is his main objective. It is rather to extend Ankara's influence to a geographical range that resembles that of the Ottoman Empire.
Now let's look at it from the other side. What does Greece want or perhaps need in the Eastern Mediterranean and more generally from Turkey and President Erdoğan?
So for Greece, the top priority in the last 8 months in the Eastern Mediterranean has been to undermine, in other words, the Turkey-Libya agreement. And through our Greek-Egyptian agreement, to an extent, we have succeeded. We consider the agreement between Athens and Cairo to be the sole legal delimitation agreement in the given section of the Mediterranean, which first creates a legal dispute with the Turkey-Libya agreement, as both agreements overlap one another. Our goal in the Eastern Mediterranean is certainly not to create a bloc that will be anti-Turkish. Greece wants Turkey to be part of regional developments and to be part of energy developments. We do realize that Turkey and the Turkish market is too big to be ignored. And Turkey, of course, can be and should be, if it decides to play a more constructive role in regional affairs, it can and it should be a market of great interest for all producers in the region, be it Egypt, Israel, and even Cyprus, or provided, of course, that there will be a solution to the Cyprus issue and that Turkey will recognize the Republic of Cyprus. Greece does not want to marginalize Turkey from the region. I think that what is happening for the last couple of years is that Turkey is marginalizing itself from regional developments, because if you look into the map, Turkey has very poor relations with both Israel and Egypt. Turkey does not recognize Cyprus. Turkey disputes and challenges Greece's sovereign rights in a very consistent way. Turkey has been part of the Libya and the Syrian wars, and it has and it shows an aggressive and assertive policy vis-à-vis its neighbors. So it's not Greece to blame for Turkey feeling or being actually marginalized from regional affairs. It's more the Turkish leadership to blame. Greece does not want to formulate an anti-Turkish front, but still, the more we feel threatened by Turkey, the more necessary it becomes for us to find not necessarily alliances, but synergies with other regional players, but also with outside players like the US or the European Union, which have a common interest, which is to see the Eastern Mediterranean becoming a more stable region and a more prosperous region. We cannot be stable and prosperous with Turkey playing that unproductive role. If diplomacy does not prevail, and if Turkey continues with this gunboat diplomacy and the continuous threats against almost every other regional player, sooner or later, it will find itself in a stalemate.
Let's go back to the question of what Erdoğan wants. Over the course of his rule, he has reoriented his country from facing Europe to facing the Middle East. He's defined it as an Islamic country, the recent conversion of Hagia Sophia and other churches back to mosques, the declaration that the liberation of the Al-Aqsa Mosque is his vision, and so forth and so on. You just said that you would hope that Ankara would understand that its national interest lies in a solution in the Eastern Mediterranean that is consistent with law, practice, history. What is it that you see in what President Erdoğan has been doing recently that suggests he's looking for that kind of rational solution?
Well, I'm not that optimistic, to be frank. I only hope that Turkey and Erdogan will adapt to what I said before, the regional realities and legal realities, but I'm not that optimistic. But furthermore, what is worrisome is Erdogan's inclination to make comparisons between Islam and other religions, with the former always prevailing morally, as well as his strong view that the West is dishonest and corrupted, but also that its superiority is declining. In its neighborhood, only during the last year, Turkey has penetrated Syria. It has established positions in Iraq on the pretext of countering Kurdish terrorists. It is heavily involved in the Libyan war, but systematically breaching the UN arms embargo. And it has secured a base in Somalia. This did not take place in the last year, but some years ago. At the same time, it is using Muslim populations at various points on the globe to extend its influence. And it is doing this by claiming the role of the protector of Sunnis, trying to win over and become a rallying point for these Muslims. And this has gained Turkey a Muslim audience, but drawn the ire of the leaderships of many Muslim and Arab states. What's more, Turkey nowadays disputes the theory and practice of international treaties and conventions. It defies institutional processes and supranational organizations like the EU, like the United Nations, even NATO, although it's part of it. And it emphasizes, and this is due to President Erdogan's inclination to interpersonal relationships and what we call transactional diplomacy. It pointedly disregards international law, fabricating its own admixture of interpretations and case law to produce a result that is usually tailored to its own ends. So in all these ways, Turkey is trying to force Greece to come to the negotiating table. And in other words, through its coercive diplomacy and by creating gray zones through its power, it is trying to gradually wear down and strain the Greek side to make us, in future negotiations, more open to Turkey's sensitivities. And at the same time, Ankara is attempting to keep us from exercising our sovereign rights in areas of Turkey's interest, in the hope of weakening these rights over time. Turkey also wants to make everyone aware that it is the dominant power in the wider region and that no one can or should question it.
All of that's true, and none of it sounds like it'll end well. How does Greece protect its rights, achieve its goals, and avoid war?
So Greece's goal is twofold. First, having strengthened its deterrent force, of course, given that Turkey is heavily armed and aggressive, Greece wants a dialogue with Turkey within a predefined framework and with a commitment to go to the International Court if we cannot settle our differences bilaterally. In fact, ideally, we would like to see a new rapprochement between the EU and Turkey, obviously in the context of a special relationship with specific commitments and terms that include good neighborly relations with Greece and Cyprus. Thus, EU-Turkey and Greece-Turkey dialogues could proceed in tandem. Of course, and I think this should be the second axis of our policy, for this to happen, Turkey needs to be given incentives and a way out of its current stalemate so as not to further alienate the pro-European camp within Turkey, but at the same time, we need resolve and economic measures to tone down Turkey's aggressiveness.
What do you think the Europeans and the Americans should do to support Greece?
Erdogan gains confidence every time he sees either the EU or the US show their surprising level of tolerance for Turkey's moves. So this makes the message unclear, and the Turkish leadership takes advantage of this. But the biggest challenge is that the West hasn't yet developed a consistent policy as to how it should deal with Turkey. Erdogan's Turkey thinks that it does not belong to a camp, that it is too powerful and too big to be under the umbrella of any intergovernmental institution. And of course, Turkey, according to Erdogan, can negotiate on an equal basis with other major powers. So nowadays, although the European Union has a great leverage towards Turkey that has to do with the poor performance of the Turkish government with regard to its economy, we see members of the European Union, like Germany, focusing on how to improve relations with Turkey, which of course, as I said before, is something that Greece also expects. It is crucial for our foreign policy to see Turkey not alienating from the West and from the European Union, but returning into the West's orbit. But this does not seem to be the case anymore. But regardless of that, the European Union can, in a way, stem Turkey's aggressiveness by economic means. And although we have seen that sanctions do not necessarily work and are not necessarily very effective in the case of Russia after the illegal annexation of Crimea. But given that the Germans are cautious towards imposing sanctions on Turkey, we cannot tell whether President Erdogan is bluffing when he says that he will go till the end in order to protect his country's interests, or this is not the case and he really means it. The problem here is that the European Union and the US, for different reasons, have not yet found the necessary mix of policies using carrot and stick towards Turkey. In the case of the European Union, the carrot can very well be the upgrade of the customs union, the funds that Turkey needs to improve the situation in its economy, and I'm referring especially to foreign direct investment. Turkey desperately needs to secure FDIs from abroad, and it cannot be Qatar, being there for Turkey always. More than 50% of Turkey's economy in terms of exports and imports depends on the European Union and the European Union economy. So we have to take that into consideration. But on the other hand, we need the stick. And the stick has to be measures and has to be sanctions that will be on the table, but sanctions that might hurt the Turkish economy, provided that Turkey continues on the same pace and direction, questioning Greece's sovereign rights, violating Cyprus's exclusive economic zone, and gradually becoming a structural challenge, not only for Greece, Cyprus, Egypt, or other regional states, but a structural challenge, if not threat, for the whole of the West.
Now, let me push back and be a bit undiplomatic. The situation in Europe is, to put it mildly, fraught. You have the pandemic, you have the recession, you have the profound fight between the northern part of Europe and the southern part of Europe, the western part of Europe and the eastern part of Europe. You lack coherent, aggressive leadership. You've got a German chancellor who is soon to leave. You've got a French president who's going to have to start thinking about his reelection soon. The conditions don't seem to exist to do the kinds of things you just described in a coherent, forceful, focused way, that the Germans have not been terribly supportive, that they are, as you said, balanced between what to do about Turkey and what to do about Greece. There's a kind of moral equivalence there, which is astounding to look at from a distance. You, after all, are a NATO partner, are an EU partner. Turkey is a NATO partner that's buying weaponry from Russia. It's a very complicated situation. Although I see your argument and I see the desirability of the path you lay out, is anybody in Berlin, Paris, or Brussels listening?
First and foremost, Greece is vigilant in order not to let Turkey run rampant in the Eastern Mediterranean, and be sure about it. However, I agree with the core of your argument that nowadays the European Union is facing so many challenges, both abroad but also inside the European family, that the way we tackle the Turkish challenge might not be a priority. Still, the Eastern Mediterranean is a region which is becoming the focus, or one of the focuses of international affairs. Why is that? Because we have so many challenges being concentrated in the region at the same time, namely failed states or dysfunctional states, to be politically correct, like the ones in Libya and Syria. We have the repercussions of the COVID-19, which might be dire for a number of countries in the northern part of Africa and the Middle East as well. We have a vacuum, both after the US decided to not to deal with everyday affairs of the wider region, but also we have an Arab vacuum as well. We also detect that Russia is trying to restore part of its influence in the Eastern Mediterranean through Syria. Also, China is interested in the Eastern Mediterranean because this region is crucial to its Silk Road initiative, this Belt Road initiative of China, especially as far as trade is concerned. And also, we have jihadist terrorism and we have migration and refugees, which means that even if our European partners or our American partners want to be defiant on the Eastern Mediterranean developments, they simply can't be. So in my point of view, Greece must persuade its partners that what is happening and what will happen in the Eastern Mediterranean is not only, a part of Greece's national interests and is not only to the interest of Greece or Cyprus or other regional powers. It is to the interest of the West as a whole. Because if the Eastern Mediterranean becomes more unstable, if, for instance, Egypt fails, which means that we will have a huge black hole at this part of the world, if the Libyan and the Syrian crises are not solved, if we have new migration and refugee flows coming both from Turkey and from Libya, trying to reach European soil, then it will not be Greece that will be in a difficult position to tackle these challenges. It will be the whole of the European Union. And of course, the United States also have an interest in making sure that Russia and China are not going to become dominant powers in the Eastern Mediterranean.
It is 100 years ago that the Ottoman Empire formally disappeared. And as you've pointed out earlier in our conversation, there is a kind of new Ottomanism afoot. So I want to end with the question I started with. All of this on the table and all of the irrationality and short-sightedness we see in leaders in Europe, in the United States, elsewhere. Are you sure there's not going to be a war between Turkey and Greece?
EU's and US's inaction whets Erdogan's appetite, that's for sure. And we have a neighbor which is important, big, but still very aggressive, very assertive, and looking for adventures. Turkey is exercising a coercive diplomacy and wants to impose its will on other states in the region, but in a wider area as well. Still, and although the dynamics are not in the most positive direction, I still consider that major crisis between Greece and Turkey is not the most plausible scenario. It seems to me that the next couple of weeks will determine whether Greece and Turkey are going to enter into a dialogue with the restart of the exploration talks, which ended in March 2016. If this is going to be the case, then we stand a chance of seeing de-escalation of the current crisis. Otherwise, we should prepare ourselves for any scenario, even the worst case scenario. Greece is a NATO ally, is at the core of the European Union, part of the Eurozone, and it's not that easy for Turkey to start a war or even a short military conflict with us.
Well, this has been the year of the plague so far. Let's hope that things work out in a better way in the Eastern Mediterranean, and hope that the approach you have outlined, which makes terrific sense for both countries, Turkey and Greece, is the one that eventuates over the next weeks and months. Thank you very much, Constantinos.
Thank you, Alan. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the New Thinking for a New World podcast. We welcome your comments and please subscribe to other episodes in the podcast app of your choice. This podcast was made possible with the generous support of the Stavros Niarchos Foundation.